Hello investors and welcome back to Rychotech Industries. Today's video is going to be about a game that I played growing up. I played it with my brothers, I played it by myself, I completed part of it. But yeah, so it was on the Nintendo 64 and the game would happen to be Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I loved this game as a kid, like I just said, but has it aged that well? I'm honestly not sure if I can remember. So let's find out, because I'm making a video about it right now. Stop! Okay, because Disney is kind of like the pit bull of content use, you're not going to hear much official Star Wars music in this video, so thank you, content use problems. Even if you were born under a rock and never met a single human being, you probably know what Star Wars is, or at least have heard the title. It's one of the greatest cinematic sagas ever made, and it came with a lot of video games. If somehow you don't know the Star Wars timeline, here's what happened. The old ones came out back then, the new ones came out less back then, and then the new one is coming out in the future. But we're talking about the new ones, specifically the first new one. Star Wars The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, the heyday for the Nintendo 64, in the same year as the Dreamcast was released. Known for a few things, one of this movie's most iconic scenes is the pod racing scene. What is pod racing? Essentially, you sit behind two jet engines while moving extremely fast. Sounds fun, right? Naturally, they would make a racing game based off of this idea, and knowing their audience, it was one of the best decisions ever. It would go on to outsell Wipeout and F-Zero, as well as be the Guinness World Record best-selling racing sci-fi game as of 2011. The home version of the game existed on home computers, the Nintendo 64, and the Sega Dreamcast. Oh, and also the Game Boy Color. I don't think it's the same game, though. Maybe if you're hopped up on something strong and probably illegal, they would look the same. Hey, that's not a Game Boy, that's a shoe. Come on, where is it? It's gotta be here somewhere. Ah! One notable difference between the Nintendo 64 version of the game and all others is the lack of pre-rendered cutscenes. The N64 only shows some static logos and goes right into the game. Okay, let's do this. Wait, really? The menu music for this is the most epic song in the movie? The Duel of the Fates? I'm not quite sure this game is on the same level of intensity as Liam Neeson with a lightsaber, but well, let's continue. Like most games, this one has a few different modes of play. Tournament is where you do everything. You play the tracks as circuits to earn money to upgrade your pod, unlock other racers, and other tracks to race on. Free play is like Tournament, but you can't unlock anything if you win, and if you haven't unlocked it, you can't use it, so I'm not sure the point of it. Time Attack is free play with time being the focus, and 2-player is just free play with 2 people. The game gives you a variety of unlockable characters, including this one that is clearly not a pod racer. The big final unlockable character is Sebulba, but I never really had the desire to play as him, seeing as he's a total jerk. Ah, here we go. I have the game 100% as Anakin Skywalker on my Nintendo 64 save, because he's the only human in the game. Why would I play as anyone else? The first level that you get to play is the training version of the track that was in the movie. Honestly, racing through the sands of Tatooine was a great way to introduce the game. The track is fun, but later you can actually unlock the track from the movie, known as the Boonta Classic. Now this game has to take place in some sort of alternate reality where instead of going on to become a Jedi, Anakin uses the Force to become the best pod racer in the galaxy. But that means he would eventually build up enough money to free himself and his mom, which means that she'd never die and he'd never become Darth Vader. Another fun thing that you can do in this game is look around this little hub location. What is that? Is that a space duck? I don't get it. Alright, well, let's try the Dreamcast version, as it has a little more to offer, and it is a stronger system. Wait, why isn't it working this time? Cut, just cut to it working. Alrighty, what are we starting out with? Really? This game has a ton of pre-rendered cutscenes that run at what looks like 15 frames per second. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like they could have just used downscaled footage from the actual movie or just had the cutscenes run in the game's engine, but I'm not a fan of this low frame rate. You okay? Need a glass of water? Don't knock yourself out. Yeah, the load times for this version are sadly atrocious. I understand this is the early days of CD games, but still, I was never a fan of how game load times increased over time. Well, this is kind of interesting. The N64 and Dreamcast versions have the same blips on the walking animation of this pit droid. One thing that is pretty nice about this game is the uniformity of the gameplay across platforms. Graphics aside, the Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast handle very well in comparison to each other. No major hiccups. The tracks explore a wide variety of planets, each with their own specific pre-rendered intros. However, they all seem very similar. They don't seem to deviate from a specific design per planet that just gets a bit more complex each time you encounter the planet later in the game. This makes sense for games at the time needing to use smaller amounts of assets for a bigger game, but it doesn't allow the game to age well. The racing mechanics are pretty simple. Press A to go, steer with the analog stick, same controls that every racer had back then. One unique thing was the boost system. If you were going at a certain speed and had enough straight track ahead of you, you could push the throttle stick forward and briefly release A to activate boost. This would cause your pod to go crazy speeds and lose a lot of control, but it would be very helpful in gaining that slight increase in speed to cross the finish line first. There's also a drifting mechanic, which I didn't know about as a kid. Essentially how this works is it will let your pod's direction rotate. You'll still turn a bit in the direction you're facing, but when you release the drift button, your pod's motion completely changes to the direction it's facing. Finally, you can rotate your pod 90 degrees left or right. This would be helpful in getting through small spaces, but it does so little difference that I never really found a good use for it. Yeah. What'd you say to me? This was always a weird thing to me. All the aliens speak to you in their own respective languages, but you never know what they're saying. I guess that's okay, considering you don't know all the languages in the galaxy, but it's like driving poorly through a foreign country. Everybody is mad and cursing at you, but you don't know exactly what they're saying, so it carries a lot less of an impact. One downside to this game is the complete lack of any sort of combat. Your pods can bump into each other for the split second that you're actually near another racer, but because everyone is going so fast, the gaps between pods is always very large. There's no power-ups or weapons that you can pick up, so imitating scenes in the movie that show combat between two pods never really happens in the game. It's really more a matter of who can be the fastest from the beginning of the race and maintain that speed. This does harm the competitive aspect of it, but the single-player experience does still hold up. Overall, this game does a fantastic job of recreating the feel of pod racing in the movie, which was ultimately the goal. Actually, the ultimate goal is probably just to make tons of money. Overall, this game does a fantastic job of recreating the feel of the pod racing in the movie, which means it succeeds for the most part, which is pretty impressive considering the era of gaming. It is by no means a perfect game, but I loved it as a kid and I still like it now. I would recommend it to people who like racing games, but I probably wouldn't recommend it to everybody. So that is Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. If you want to subscribe, click the link on the screen. There's all sorts of other information about places you can find me on social media on the screen. Also t-shirts, somewhere on the bottom here. I don't know which corner it is because I can't figure out how mirrors work. That's about all I have to say. I'll be making another video soon, so be sure to stick around. I'm going to fade out now, but the information is going to stay on the screen with some nice space stars going by, so enjoy that for the next, I don't know, 15 seconds, however long it takes for me to end this video in post. See you guys next time.